Today we have a very special story, very interesting story.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about the best sports deal ever made.
They said that when you say the word interesting, that means it's about to get real.
Yeah, that's a fact.
It's about to get real.
So this is the best sports deal ever made in history of sports, right? So in the 1970s, there was a league called the ABA.
Yeah, American Basketball Association.
Right. So there was the NBA, which everybody knows about the NBA, right? But then there was the ABA. So the best way I can really describe the ABA, if anybody's a football fan, remember the AFL?
Yeah.
So
even now the XFL.
Right.
Yeah.
But the AFL was pretty big at one point. They had Herschel Walker, I think.
Yeah, in the 80s. Yep.
So the AFL was a football league in the 80s, and they was just wow. Like they had the cheerleaders, just it was the whole vibe was just like,
yeah, they wanted to be everything the NFL wanted.
Yeah, it was just more. It was renegade.
You know what would be better? Like WWF and WCW.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That was for the kids.
Similar.
Yeah, it's very similar.
So the ABA was like, the NBA at the time was kind of boring. It was like the Celtics, just blue collar, it's just kind of boring.
Yeah.
When the ABA, they had the striped basketballs, they had the cheerleaders, they had the dunking, and they had good players too.
They had great players.
They had Dr. J.
Yeah.
They had Moses Malone.
David Thompson.
So they had like
George Gervin,
Iceman.
Yeah.
So the ABA was just like, it was like street ball. Yeah, that's the comparison. ABA was like the N1 street ball, like the Rucker, stuff like that.
The All-Star game, like that comes from the NBA. All the festivities.
The All-Star game, all that.
The dunk contest. Yeah. That was ABA.
Exactly. So ABA was for excitement, right? But financially, it just wasn't working out for them, right? So what happened is that there was 7 teams in the ABA, and the NBA wanted to merge, right? Because it was just didn't make sense to just kind of compete with them, and the ABA was kind of on their last leg financially. Yeah. So the NBA went to them and they proposed a merger, right? So the ABA accepted the merger, and it was 7 teams at the time.
Right. So
4 teams were brought into the NBA. Those 4 teams were the Nets, the Nuggets, the Pacers, and the Spurs, which are still in the NBA today, right? Yeah. And then, so there was 3 more teams left. So one team, Virginia, they actually fizzled out, and they didn't get brought in because they just didn't make it, right? Yeah. They bellied up. So that left 2 teams, right? So you had Kentucky, the team from Kentucky.
I think Colonels.
The Kentucky Colonels.
You know what's crazy about them? The crazy thing about them is that they were owned by the owner of Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
John Brown.
Yeah. So the NBA buys him out for $3 million. At the time, 1976, it's like, that's a lot of money. But it's like, that's a side business for me. Like, I got Kentucky Fried Chicken. So he takes the deal.
And he also he became the governor of Kentucky.
Yeah, governor of Kentucky too.
Yeah. It's all right. So they had the Kentucky Colonels and the St. Louis Spirits. St. Louis Spirits. Yeah. So they offered the Kentucky team and the St. Louis team $3 million as a buyout. Yeah. Kentucky takes it, right? Right. St. Louis says not so fast. Yeah. We're not interested. Yeah. Not interested.
Well, they said no because they had the vision. They were like, look.
Well, before we even go to that. So they said no, right? But they had good talent.
Yeah.
They had Moses Malone. A few other players, right?
Yeah, I think that was his rookie year, 1976. He's the first man-child. The first
He's the first person to come from high school.
Right, he's the first man-child.
To professional.
Yeah.
Right. So they rejected it, right? And the owners of the team, it was 2 brothers, Ozzie and Dan. And what's the last name?
Silner.
The
Silner brothers.
Ozzie and Dan Silner. So what they negotiated was a $2 million buyout, and a part of the 4 teams that were going into the NBA, TV rights.
Right.
So they got 1/7 of the TV rights of those 4 teams that went to the NBA, right? So at the time, TV wasn't really big. It was like black and white, the things with the wire and stuff like that. Not
that far back. They was color.
70s.
They had color in the 70s.
All right, well, barely. But nobody was making money. Nobody was making money on TV.
No, not yet. Not yet.
So they say, okay, 1/7 of 4 teams. TV rights, whatever. They were so eager to get the deal. The NBA just wanted to get the deal done, right? So they said, okay, whatever. Give them $2 million and give them 1/7 and let it, let them go on their way.
Yeah. At that time, I think the biggest star in the NBA, you have Oscar Robertson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, And Dr. J is right there on that line of becoming superstar. Bill Russell probably is one of the big stars too. Not Bill Russell, Bill Walton.
Bill Walton.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So now, this is 1976?
76.
It's 1976. So, a few years pass, and the 80s come, and Larry Bird and Magic Johnson come into the league, right?
Yeah.
And the NBA changes forever, right?
Yeah.
And then a few years after Larry Bird and Magic Johnson come into the league,
There's this guy,
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
And then the league changes even more forever.
Yeah,
right?
as far as obviously the landscape and now TV.
So now television comes into play, right? And you have a network called ESPN, and now sports is just American television staple, right? Everybody watches sports on TV now in the 80s, 90s. So now what happened as nobody would ever watch sports on TV. Let's just give these guys 1/7. They ended up, as the league grew, so the league grew to 30 teams, right?
Yeah.
So their TV revenue, the two brothers, equaled 2% of the total TV revenue for the NBA, right?
Right.
So every year, they got 2% of TV revenue in perpetuity. That was the best part of the deal.
Yeah.
It was in perpetuity. It was no end date. It's forever.
So you want to just tell them what perpetuity is? Some people don't even know.
Yeah, perpetuity means forever.
Continuous.
That's the easy answer. That's the quick.
Continuous.
That's the quick answer. So now they have 2% of all NBA TV revenue forever, right? So this thing is one of the most embarrassing things that the NBA has ever dealt with, right? Because they end up paying these guys $300 million.
Right, from
1976 to 2014.
The crazy part is that from 76 to 79, they didn't make a dollar. But from 80 to 97, or 80 to like 2000, it's 300 million.
300 million. 2014, it was 300 million, right? So finally, 2014, the NBA, they're going to re-up on the TV deal, right?
Right. So like they had a few TV deals prior. They had one with NBC. And then they had one with ESPN. And like you said, sports were built off of that. Like that's a 24/7 sports network. So you could imagine like people are going to be consuming sports at an all-time high. But in 2014, they re-up with Turner Sports and ESPN, a 9-year deal for $24 billion.
Right. So right before they do that, they say, okay, we have to get away from this deal because we've been bleeding money for 30 years. And it's only going to get worse as we continue to grow. And now they see that, okay, the TV deals is going to keep getting bigger and bigger, right?
Right.
And we're not going to keep paying these guys 2% forever, right? So we got to get away from this. So they agree on a deal in 2014 for a lump sum buyout of $500 million, right? So now you add the $300 million that they got up into 2014.
Add that number up.
Then you add the $500 million. So they got $800 million. They got $800 million on a $3 million deal.
Yeah.
$3 million buyout originally that they turned down. They ended up getting $800 million.
The NBA didn't even have to have this problem. They didn't even have to. Like they wanted to buy teams. They wanted to buy Detroit in the late 70s. They wanted to buy New Jersey Nets at that time in the 90s. They would have been owners. In 2010, they had accumulated almost $300 million. They were worth more than the Indiana Pacers were.
No, but the best part about the story is that, so they make $800 million from the NBA without any overhead. A team that nobody's heard of. A phantom team that nobody's heard of.
Straight profit.
No players, no roster, no overhead, no building, nothing. They literally made almost $1 billion just because.
Chilling, yeah.
Just because.
Yeah.
Forever. So many people say, okay, well, why did they take the buyout? They could have just kept this going forever, right? So one of the guys died, rest in peace, a couple years ago. So I think, he probably gets to a point where it's like, okay, I'm about to die soon, so I might as well just get $500 million up front. That's enough for my family.
In their late 70s.
Yeah, it's all right. And then also, it was a headache for them because they hired lawyers. They kept going back and forth because they felt like the NBA was kind of cheating them with the numbers and it wasn't correct. So that was kind of, and then their name was always associated with that. They didn't really want to be associated with that forever. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, it's not a bad problem.
They kind of wanted to just get it over with. But in life, there's ups and downs, right? So they make almost $800 billion doing nothing. But then they lose a substantial amount of money.
Yeah. They connect with this
the
guy.
notorious.
The notorious one. Bernie Madoff.
Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
Bernie Madoff. So Bernie Madoff burns him pretty bad.
Yeah, man.
Bernie Madoff burns him pretty bad. And they lose a lot of money with Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, they said thank God they didn't lose it all because they had diversified their portfolio, which is good. But they did lose a substantial amount with Bernie.
They lost a lot.
Yeah. What are you doing, 250 years?
Yeah, he's doing a lot. He's doing a lot of time.
Yeah.
Bernie Madoff plays a part in Mets as well.
Yeah, the Wilpon family lost a lot of money.
We'll talk about that sometime.
Yeah.
But hey, they won. Even though they lost a lot of money with Bernie Madoff, they still won in the grand scheme of things. And it's a good story. And how we bring it back to the everyday person is that we always talk about equity, right? And the power of equity and the power of delayed gratification, not taking everything up front. Mm-hmm. So they still got $2 million up front. But that TV deal that they struck was brilliant, right? It ended up netting them almost $1 billion. So the guy from KFC, I mean, he's filthy rich. I'm sure, it's not the end of the world. But he has to be kicking himself or his family. I mean, you took $3 million and the other guys.
How about the owners of the Virginia Squires? Like, they left before they could even get the $3 million, the $2 million offer to be bought out, man.
They were the owners.
No, the Virginia Squires.
Oh, Virginia Squires.
They folded before they can get the deal.
They folded.
Yeah.
It wasn't their fault. They folded.
Yeah.
Well,